بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ask Eman on Tuesday, live broadcasted from the studio of Eman Channel on Sky 757. It is a live interactive program, so if you have any question that you would like to get it answered, then pick up the phone and dial 0203 515 0757. Alternatively, you can drop us a text. At the same time, if you have any questions and if you'd like to leave your comments, then please feel free to drop us on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. We are also live on our website, emanchannel.tv. And don't forget to please like, share, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook and Instagram page, and not to forget, follow our Twitter handle. I'm your host, Qamarul, and joining me tonight is none other than a very renowned face of our community, Shaykh Ad-Duha. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome to the program Ask Eman.
Alhamdulillah, barakallah feek, jazakallah khair.
Thank you.
I was just thinking, am I going to be able to keep up with this guy's energy levels?
Jazakallah khair. Thank you ever so much. No, there's always a lot to learn from you, Sheikh. Now, let's start with the most important question. I know you're in the sector of education. We'll talk briefly. As far as I'm aware, I've read the news in Wales. 2021, there won't be any GCSEs or A-level examinations. Now, if that is true, and if that is what is going to happen, I'm assuming the other nations perhaps might follow a similar footstep, if not fully.
Do you know what alternative they're pursuing?
That's they are looking into the classroom-based assessments. So as I'm assuming, as it was done this year. Now, if that is the case, I would like to know specifically the impact on Muslim community, in particular Muslim children, and obviously the impact the Muslim private schools that are there in place. What do you think would happen, and how good is this for our future generation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is, it's an educational question, and this is more a question of pedagogy and so on. The debate, to be honest, the debate's out there. What form of assessment is the most effective? Whether exams are good or not, whether they're a genuine reflection of ability, etc. And we know that they're not 100% ideal, but nobody's come up with a better alternative. To be honest, the government has entertained alternative education systems, alternatives to GCSEs and A-levels in the past, and some schools have already implemented it. So there was the 14 to 19 strategy, which was going to bring in a more kind of baccalaureate style, European baccalaureate style system and so on. But that wasn't specifically targeting the whole question of assessment. I don't think anybody is going to be particularly disadvantaged as a result of it. I think there'll be enough time for people to adapt and so on. I suppose students who favor exams, they're good at it, they're able to perform under pressure and so on. They may feel, that their advantage over others has gone. Perhaps, wallahu alam, and I'm a little bit out of touch with education at the moment, have not been actively in it for, at least in the mainstream space, for a while now. But, you could say that perhaps it will level out the playing field a little bit amongst students, because most people, in terms of classroom-based assessments and things like that, would perform like the competition would be a little bit more balanced. However, there is something to be said, wallahu alam, in my view, there's something to be said about memorization. And I do feel as though modern education has moved too far away from memorization-based learning, and the kind of learning that results in, from a young age, kind of results in learning that is mustahdar, that is, like that enables quick recall, fast recall and so on. Knowledge on the tips of your fingers. And I've often found when I teach children kind of in an Islamic context, perhaps, where, like, I personally favor a healthy degree of memorization and so on when I teach, I find that young people struggle with that. So I'm not arguing that should necessarily be an assessment strategy, but more that this is a skill that should not be ignored, and that students Like the students' ability to memorize should be something that should be sharpened and nurtured. And I often find that the varied forms of learning and teaching strategies that exist nowadays, I feel as though that it kind of ignores that a little bit and undermines that a little bit. And I would like to see a bit more balance. But specific to your question, I don't see anyone particularly being disadvantaged. People just have to, schools in particular, registered schools will be informed well in advance and they'll be able to make the adjustments.
Thank you very much for that. Now, the next discussion I would like to have, I'm sure as an imam, as a teacher, you may have come across this discussion and there's been a lot of articles being published. And in fact, if I can pick up the question from social media, yesterday we did a program and it says here, leave the mosques open. Who are we to close the mosque? Now, it's in relation to the government guidance when they say place of worship can be kept open for at least individual prayer, if not congregation. Then why are we in a position that we, based on certain discussion, or rather some would say allegation, that we won't be able to control the congregation inside the masjid, and that's why we don't have enough manpower, so that's why we're closing down the masajid? Some use these arguments. How appropriate is that?
Not to fob off the question, but I do sometimes feel as though these types of we're in a democracy and people do like to engage and have lots of discussion about questions that ultimately are political in nature. This is, Muslims have not been singled out when it comes to the question of places of worship.
Correct.
The rules have been applied equally to all places of worship. Yes.
Correct.
It affects us differently because of the fact that masjid-based worship isn't like church-based worship. Church-based worship is mainly individual. Masjid-based worship is mainly congregational. And for that reason, we are affected by it more. We're disproportionately affected, right? But we have not been singled out by the rule. And I think we should recognize that. And perhaps, and I hope people don't mind me saying this, use our time, find better things to do with our time, because our debates and our discussions about this are not going to change anything. If anything, if anybody wants to do something constructive in this kind of a scenario where you want to have something to say, you want your voice heard in a matter that affects the Muslim community, then think about constructive efforts like working towards and supporting efforts to develop a strong Muslim lobby, and empowering and financially supporting with money and manpower and ideas and so on, supporting organizations that represent the Muslim community's interests, and ensuring that they have the kind of resources and the kind of manpower and the kind of capacity that other representation-based organizations have, like the Jewish community has, and so on, that has the power and the resources to be able to lobby in matters that concern the Muslim community. But beyond that, when these types of decisions are made, and we know that we have to go along with it and follow the rule, and and the rules apply to everybody effectively, then I think there's nothing left for us to do other than make the most out of the situation and do the best that we can. Right? We can't come out of this. No amount of outrage and expression of outrage is going to change the fact that these rules are in place now, and the lockdown is in place. So, I know we want our voices heard, and I know people want their grievance heard, etc. But there are mechanisms for that the Muslim community doesn't have. We don't have effective mechanisms for our voices to be heard. We don't have effective mechanisms to lobby the government when we are affected by certain issues. That is the bigger issue. That is the bigger picture.
So when you say we don't have, that means we need people who are actively engaging in the mainstream society.
Well, we have organizations, right? We have organizations, regardless of what you think about them and whether you think they represent you or not. MCB and others, right? And other organizations like MCB, they are there. This is supposed to be their job. They're supposed to be the voice of the Muslim community, or at least, to be more technical, the voice of their delegates, their representatives, the people that they represent, their affiliates, if you like. But they are not sufficiently resourced. Our organizations are extremely weak. All right, I'll give you an example. Recently, because of this RSC issue, I've been making this point again and again. And, it's not exactly the same issue, but the principle is the same, that it's a question of our voices being heard, Muslim community issues being represented effectively. the way it's done in other communities, right? I'll give you an example, right? That the LGBT community has Stonewall Equality representing their interests, right, and their needs and so on. And they lobby heavily, very well organized, very effective. Now, this is not a question of their rights and etc. That's not the point. But the point is just if you do a resource comparison, right, their last accounts show that in the last submitted account year, the year that they submitted accounts for, I think it was 2018, 2019, their total spend on their community's interests, right, on the LGBT community's interest by Stonewall Equality was £9 million.
Substantial, very, very
£9 million, right? And, you know, it's staffed by 150 people. The organization has 150 staff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, compare that with any Muslim organization that does work that's in any way similar in terms of lobbying, in terms of representing, and so on and so forth, and you'll get your answer. We haven't got the mechanism and we haven't invested in the mechanism. And when these organizations ask for support, nobody supports them.
And sadly, I want to connect there. The truth is, whenever someone wants to do, or any particular organization or institution wants to do something, we'll always have enemies, unfortunately, within ourselves that would stop the progress of particular institution or organization, just in the name of they don't want others to be more successful than them, or one organization has more interest than others. So what message would you have? Just
but I think the bigger problem, I think there will always be different organizations. There will always be competing interests.
There is nothing wrong with that.
There will always be sectarian lines, you know, groupism, etc. All of this stuff is inevitable. Not good, but inevitable.
But for common purposes, can we not come together?
The bigger problem actually is that as a community, our mindset is that we don't value that type of work.
Okay.
Right? We don't value this type of work. We don't think of it as important enough to en masse, right, set standing orders up. Do you understand?
Yes.
So, like, if you think about it, right? MCB is prominent. Everybody knows MCB. I'll mention MCB, right? If MCB represents 500 affiliate organizations, I would have thought that the logical thing would have been for the congregations of those affiliate organizations, whatever their relationship is, whether they are masjid congregations or whether they are some other type of stakeholder, I would have thought that the logical thing would have been for a substantial proportion of them to be actively supporting the MCB with maybe small standing orders or something like that. And the same goes for any other organization that is doing that kind of work.
Okay.
We don't have the attitude that is required in order to be able to do that. And I think that's fundamentally the issue. The same goes for education, the same goes for research, the same goes for think tank type work, all of this type of work that is part and parcel, if you like, of functioning as communities, particularly as minorities within a kind of a Western democracy. These are all things that we're behind in. And that's the bigger picture. Those are the things that we have to address. And these types of efforts, they're not always successful, right? You know, not every lobbying effort, no matter how powerful, no matter how resourced, no matter how well financed, gets what it wants. But the effort is necessary.
Okay.
And they get their successes because they are knocking on the government's door.
Continuously.
Right, continuously. And we don't have that.
Thank you very much. So in short, if I had to summarize there, we all have to support each other, especially if there is some good work going on out there. And even if it's not within our line, if it's something that we perhaps not agree necessarily, but if it's a work that is good for the common and for the common purposes to achieve a particular goal, it's best that we work together so that we can ensure that a positive result is achieved. Inshallah, we'll continue the discussion. If you would like to ask any question, then all the necessary contact details are displayed on your screen. Let's start now with the first question from WhatsApp, Shaykh, and that is an interesting one. If someone is saving money to buy a house, does he or she have to pay zakat on it?
Yes, I have read other opinions on this.
Correct.
But yes, they do have to pay zakat on it. And I'll tell you why. Because, just to contrast it with the odd view that might be out there that says that you don't have to pay zakat on it because it's money that's restricted for a particular purpose.
Correct.
That's the argument. And the reason why I would say that one should pay zakat on it and has to pay zakat on it is, A, I don't think your savings of 50, 60, 70,000 pounds that you're putting towards a mortgage is going to be substantially affected by a 2.5% zakat payment every year. In fact, it will cleanse the wealth, and inshallah there will be barakah. And most importantly, for those types of sizable savings, the poor will benefit substantially. Imagine how much charity you can do. Take pleasure in that. So what if your house purchase is delayed by 6 months, a year, whatever, right? That's the kind of delay we're talking about, right? Your zakah paid over many years on those kind of amounts is going to delay you by what? By 6 months, a year, something like that, right? That's one point. The second is that you have control. So you haven't paid zakat on it, but at any time you can change your mind. You can decide, you know what? I'll delay buying that house and we're going to buy a new car. We're going to spend £10,000 and buy a new car because, our car's gone old, right? Or something like that. You have the ability to dictate to change the purpose of that money because you have the money in your hand and you can do that. And because you have that power and flexibility over that money, you can't really say it is completely consumed by a particular need. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not money for food, for example.
No, it's not.
Right? So for that reason, people should pay zakah on money saved for things like, a property or a house or your child's education, etc.
Thank you very much for that clarification. And the next question, before I move on to other questions, I think it's relevant. And the question is building insurance allowed to cover physical damage, which isn't the same as content insurance?
I don't know the difference. Sorry, I'm not very savvy with these financial matters. You are probably better savvy. What's the difference that's been highlighted?
The content here is basically if you have content inside your home, so you have protection for that. The building insurance is the actual building itself. So there's two different types.
So the question of permissibility or impermissibility of all forms of insurance haven't got anything to do with that. It's all to do with the mechanism of insurance, how insurance works, and because insurance often involves riba. And secondly, involves payment towards an indefinite outcome. So essentially, it's like you're paying towards something that you may or may not benefit from, you may or may not collect. And this ambiguity, this uncertainty in the outcome of the payment is what basically is a haram feature. And these are the two main reasons why ulama pretty much don't permit any form of insurance unless it is some kind of necessity. So car insurance, for example, ulama don't permit because it is principally necessary, but rather because it is mandated by law. It is required by law.
Correct, but some may say car is a luxury, whereas house is very, very important.
No, but we're not talking about house. We're talking about house insurance.
The building insurance itself.
We're not talking about your building, but rather insuring the building against some unforeseen circumstance.
Correct.
So therefore, again, the need, while the vast majority of ulama continue to say that it is impermissible, again, structurally what needs to happen is halal forms of protection needs to be produced by our millionaires and billionaires and entrepreneurs.
Okay, no problem.
There is a mechanism called takaful.
Okay.
And some organizations have attempted it, but they haven't taken off. So when these things when these things are produced, they need to be done properly. And then when they are done, Muslims need to take it up and support it.
So basically, we need wealthy Muslims to support or to come up with such investments so that it can help the Muslim society, wider Muslim society.
Yeah, we need the most virtuous kind of business and trade is the kind of business that fulfills the needs of people. And here we have genuine needs that can't be fulfilled because the mechanisms out there are impermissible according to Sharia. Now, our entrepreneurs and our business community has a kind of fard kifaya upon itself, which is go out there, make money, but make money to serve these needs.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That's basically what we need now. Again, it's a bigger picture issue. We continue to suffer until somebody comes up with the solution.
Thank you very much for that. And just a clarification there. Sometime if you have got mortgage, well, not sometime, majority, if you have got mortgage, it's a mandatory for any individual to have at least, if not content, then to have a building insurance. So make sure whatever decision you make sure it's in line with whoever your financial agreements are with, because you do not want to be breaching any law. Otherwise, it could have some substantial impact should there be any concern in the future. So whatever you need to do, you need to perhaps sit down and understand things better. On this kind of show, we cannot give any specific answer, but as Shaykh has mentioned, a general guidance has been given. Thank you very much, Shaykh, for that. Now, before we take the next question on WhatsApp, let's move on to our first caller. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. We can hear you. You're live on Eman Channel. We'll come back to the caller, inshallah. And if we have lost you, then kindly please, you can dial the number again. And inshallah, we'll get you through live into the studio. Now, Shaykh, next question. And that is from YouTube. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Are we allowed to work in food delivery services? Sometimes the food we might deliver can be haram with or without the courier's knowledge.
It's permissible.
Okay.
Again, there are different views, and people
Correct.
argue on the basis of وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, and help in matters of piety and do not help in matters of sin, etc. Phrasing that verse. But the view, often using the Hanafi madhab, the view is that if you are not part of the decisions that
Directly part of it.
if you're not directly involved in the haram aspect of something. So, for example, you're not the one that's deciding, for example, that alcohol is going to be shelved in a business, but it's already there. You're just serving at the counter, for example, in a supermarket, or and there's no direct prohibition. So it's a slightly more complicated issue if you're handling alcohol, for example. So similarly, if you're delivering something, you're not involved in the ordering of something halal and in the supply of something. The ordering of something haram and the supply of something haram. You're just a conduit that is involved in the service of delivery, and for that reason, you're not involved in the haram. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you're not directly involved in the haram, and therefore it's permissible.
What I like is, obviously, you've highlighted there's difference of opinion in that, and thank you very much for sharing your opinion on this matter. Now, next, before we move on to the next question, we've got very limited time before we move on to the break. Let's see who's next on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, brother, for calling in. What's your question?
Just wanted to ask the Shaykh. Shaykh mentions, obviously, as Muslims here now of many generations, we have our institutions and organisations, subhanAllah. Do Shaykh think we actually also need the Islamic personalities to actually share the vision with the Muslim brothers and sisters, and also not just share our vision, but also share the vision for the non-Muslims in this country about what Islam is, and to present that in a way that obviously that is effective.
Okay, so when you say Islamic personalities, are you referring to scholars or anyone in general who's involved in the field of da'wah?
I would say anybody involved in representing our interests Islamically would be an Islamic personality.
I think the question is clear. If you can answer briefly in 2 minutes.
Okay, so I think the bigger issue, probably a step before that, is for us to have a vision and have some kind of leadership-based structure. I think this is something that is missing in the UK.
So the foundation should be strong.
So I'm not saying that that's the solution. I'm not saying that we have to have some kind of hierarchy-based leader where there's a kind of Amirul Mu'mineen of Britain. That's not what I'm talking about. But in all of the work that we do, two things need to happen. One is we need to have these structures in place. So if there are multiple organizations, then the organizations need to be coming together, talking to one another, and find ways to work together in what is their common interest. These structures have to be there. Secondly, and which is just as important, is that as a community, we need to be less cynical. And where even weak leadership is being provided, right, we need to respect it and support it and empower it, right? Empower it, capacity build it, give it the time and the support for it to become better, for it to build its competency and so on. Often what happens is some servants of Allah do out of sincerity and to the best of their abilities to set up institutions, set up mechanisms, set up structures and so on. And then what tends to happen is that we tear them down. We are so critical that before giving them a chance, we tear them down. And I think we really need to become a community that respects these types of efforts, understands like how difficult it is to set these things up from nothing, because that's what we are doing as a community. Often people are born into circumstances where there are structures are already in place, and now it's just a question of improving them, etc. It's a question of agendas.
So the road to success is easily defined.
For us, it's not just a question of vision. Sometimes when you have the necessary hierarchies in place and the people in place, people are being paid to do those jobs, etc., then you can say, okay, what is the vision, right? that's not where we are. We're building things from absolutely nothing, from zero. Organizations are building things from zero, and they're struggling to survive. The vast majority, whether it's a school, a seminary, whether it is a masjid, whether it is the MCB or other such a representative body, most of them are too busy struggling to survive, and most of the people working in them are volunteers.
Thank you very much. Struggling to survive. I'll come to that, inshallah, especially when we're in lockdown as well. Now, my dear viewers, we would love to continue our discussion, but it's time for a short break. You're watching Ask Eman live on Eman Channel on Sky 757. We are also live on Facebook page, YouTube channel, as well as on our website, emanchannel.tv. Do stay tuned with us. We'll be right back in a few moments. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Ask Eman, live on Eman Channel on Sky 757. We're also live on YouTube channel, Facebook page, as well as on our website, emanchannel.tv. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, as well as our Twitter handle and Instagram page. Joining me tonight is none other than Shaykh Ad-Duha. Shaykh Ad-Duha, thank you very much for your valuable time once again. Now, you mentioned in the first segment about organization, Muslim institutions struggling with finances. So now the question
resources.
Resources. Yeah. But within that resources also a financial element. It's
that's the main one. It's the main
element.
one. Yeah,
yes.
It's the main one.
Now, given the circumstances we're in, second lockdown. Now again, if you look at masajids, mostly closed. If you look at a lot of our institutions are unfortunately not at the moment effectively working as it's supposed to be. Now, which means the donation is very, very restricted. Our donation anyway wasn't great before the COVID incident, but post-COVID, it's still significantly impacted our donation. Now, what advice would you have? Because other companies, organizations are very innovative in their approach.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you what I've done with my local masjid, right? So I've been covering Jum'ah, my local masjid for the last couple of months, right? And I anticipated a lockdown in the autumn.
You mean the second lockdown?
Yeah, the second lockdown. Okay. I mean, obviously, we should have all anticipated it because it was mentioned in the summer.
Correct.
Right? They mentioned it when the first lockdown happened.
There were hints everywhere.
Yeah. They said there's most likely going to be a spike in autumn and we're going to have to deal with that. How are they going to deal with it? There's going to be a lockdown, right?
Correct.
Could have anticipated it. And all organizations should have been planning for it, right? So what we did in our masjid is I basically said to everybody, look, and the first lockdown had already brought the masjid to its needs. The masjid was in a comfortable position, but then because of the lockdown, no donations on Fridays. It was dependent on donations. Masjid ended up struggling to cover its expenses. So I said, look, we have X number of standing orders so far in the masjid, coming into the masjid right now. We need to double it. We need to get to a position where just through the monthly standing orders, the masjid's basic needs are being fulfilled.
Give me an example. What's the basic need?
So basic needs are like, in the case of my local masjid, it's rented accommodation.
Okay.
So rent is a factor, and the rent had gone up.
Okay.
Right. And then you've got salaries, the imams, the muaddin, etc. Then you've got your bills and your utilities and so on. Right. And that's without thinking about maintenance and if the carpet needs to be renewed. I know in masjids they separately fundraise for those things.
Correct.
But those basic needs that are there, your fixed costs, right? For those kind of things, every masjid should really be taking care of those things because there's fixed income, and that fixed income should come from standing orders. I donate to my local masjid through standing order because I might turn up on Friday and forget my wallet, which I often do. On Friday, you have your shower and everything, you get ready, and you put on your fresh thobe, right, and you just walk out with your keys.
Correct.
Right? Often happens. So I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to leave this to chance. The masjid contribution is going to go direct from my bank so that it's never missed. Also, why? Because this isn't a charity. I am a service user. I use the masjid. Why should I be using the masjid for free when it costs money for the masjid to run? Right? And there's volunteers working to keep the masjid running. You're a service user. It shouldn't be just the pound on Friday with the attitude that I'm doing the masjid a favor. You've got to pay for the service that you're using. Right? So, simple message. Whichever masjid you use, your local masjid, whichever masjid you frequent, whether it's your local masjid or the masjid that you regularly go to because that's where you go because of work.
Okay.
Right? if they rely on donations, then make your donation to the masjid fixed so that in all eventualities the donation goes through. And you're not going to miss £5 a month, £10 a month, £15 a month. Come on, right? And when you go through all of your standing orders and look at which one to cancel, you'll cancel Netflix. You might cancel some other, donation to a charity,
Our restaurant
etc.
bills itself are more than 200.
You'll cancel
perhaps.
all of that. You will not cancel the £15, the £10, the £5 to the masjid. You won't. Once you set it up, it will keep going.
Correct.
Right? So that's what people have to do. And even if your masjid hasn't asked for it, contact the secretary, contact the chairman, contact the masjid if they don't have an online form, right? And set up a standing order.
Or the contact, the account details might also be there on the website.
Yeah, you set it up yourself.
And also, I'd like to add when he said,
don't even wait for them to ask you, because I'm telling you,
True.
they're struggling.
Now, true, but also we have to also be innovative. Now, masajid can have contactless option. I understand on Friday we might not have our wallets with us, card with us, but surely majority of us have our mobile phones with us.
Yeah.
So even these kind of small,
but
changes.
very few masajid have that, and masajid haven't been able to respond fast enough. You got to remember
technology.
Yeah, because you got to remember, like, you have the big masjids, and they have the resources and the staff to be able to quickly do it. Smaller masjids, 200, 300, 500 capacity, they're being run by volunteers, and sometimes they don't even know, they might not know how to set these things up, and some young person goes and gives them the idea, but by the time they respond, the next lockdown is here.
Correct.
So we have to be conscious of the realities on the ground, and the realities on the ground is, yes, we have all these solutions, but not those solutions. In order for those to be implemented, it requires support. It doesn't just require somebody to go and suggest it to them, but to say, "Uncle, I'll do it for you. Let me help you set this up." Right? I'll make the calls. I'll make the inquiries. You just give me permission. You understand? So you got to get involved in that way.
Thank you very much for that. Hope it is clear. But if you've got any question along the lines, then please feel free to dial the telephone number 020351507757. Alternatively, if you would like to drop us a text on WhatsApp, then the contact details are all displayed on your screen. Before we move on to our next WhatsApp question, let's see who is on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much, my dear sister. A regular caller on Ask Eman. Are you calling from Birmingham?
Yeah, I'm calling from Birmingham.
Yes, correct. What's your question?
I have about 4 questions today.
Yes.
First 2 questions are the same about women's monthly cycle. My daughter, who is 13 years old, and she started her monthly cycle during Isha time, few minutes after Isha start Isha, few minutes after, but not like 1 hour. So she was waiting for her sister to make a Jamaat Salah, but unfortunately, and then she saw her monthly cycle. So, does she have to make that up after she prayer?
Okay, does she have to make up the Isha Salah after? Okay, finish. It's clear to us. What's your next question?
Second one is for myself, monthly cycle. I thought I was clear and then pray Isha. But I pray Isha very after, I think it's past Isha, I don't know, around 8. And then Fajr time, not really Fajr, but a few minutes before Fajr, then I saw a little bit, tiny bit red. So I didn't pray Fajr. So after that, around 10 o'clock today I clear. So do I have to make up that Fajr because I didn't pray that Fajr or not?
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Next question.
Third one is about, for example, if somebody was up to something at back home, it's been a long time. So, for example, if you want to apply visa, you want to come to this country, and then she fasted for that to get a visa, and then after she got visa herself, so she said to herself that if she come to UK, that she would be fast again, but then she did fast, but she joined the intention fast with the sunnah fast, like Thursdays and Mondays. So I don't know if she have to separate fasting for that, or she have to have both intention.
Okay, clear to us. Next, fourth question.
Fourth question is about forums, like mixed forums, like cousins, and some of my mahram are there. I used to be there, but later on I heard it's not good. to mix 4 rooms with your cousin. So then I remove my from out of there. Then I make an excuse. I told them that I have a memory problem. So later on now, one of my cousins add me on the same forum again without letting me know, because I already repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm not going back there. So in that case, they put me my number again, so without letting me know. So I don't know what to do in that case. Like, just because it's family forum, I don't want to say anything that to make them like fitna, understand? So so I don't know whether I should be removing myself again without telling them nothing now, or what should I do?
Okay, I think overall I've got the understanding. Thank you, my dear sister. Do you have any more questions?
That's all so far.
That's all. Thank you very much for that. Let's start with the first one, and inshallah, Shaykh will be answer all accordingly. Thank you once again for being our continuous caller calling into the show. Now, Shaykh, let's start with the monthly cycle.
I don't think they have to make up for either of those, the Fajr or the Isha, yeah.
Okay, khalas, so that's clear. And with regards to the fasting, if someone has made the intention, okay, if I get the visa, I'll fast, and then it coincides with the sunnah fasting, do they need to keep separate intentions?
There's a difference of opinion on this, right? So some ulama say that you can't, you have to do it separately. And some say that you can. Those who say you can also say that in your intention, the wajib fast, so in this case is the nadhar, or the pledged fast, that has to take primacy. So essentially what you're doing is you're making the intention of the wajib fast, of the obligatory fast, but really hoping for the reward of the sunnah one as well, because you happen to be fasting on a sunnah day, like a Monday or a Thursday.
Thursday, correct.
And if done in that way, then it is permissible according to most scholars. It's permissible, right? And according to some, it isn't permissible. So, and this question always comes up about the 6 fasts of Shawwal and women making up for their qada and the 6 fasts of Shawwal. Yes. And I always say that it is permissible, provided that the obligatory niyyah is the one that has primacy, and you're kind of hoping for the reward of the sunnah if you are unable to do it separately. However, it goes without saying that it is better to do them separately.
Thank you very much. And the last question in regards to mahram and family forum, and what's the correct approach?
I mean, this isn't direct contact, right? This is contact. I'm assuming it's WhatsApp.
Correct. Because she has asked a similar question before, so I know.
So you have
WhatsApp.
to look. You have to balance out the duty of silatul rahim, of maintaining family ties, and other considerations. Now, I don't know what the potential harms are. Something like this could only be. I see no obvious reason why something like that would be impermissible or discouraged.
Okay.
Because people talk to their cousins, and people maintain family ties with their cousins, and that's a good thing, right? With family relations, whether they're maharim or first cousins, second cousins, etc. People maintain relationships with them, and some cousins we're very close to, right? Like your aunt's children, your mother's sister's children, your father's brothers and sisters' children, etc. Right? First cousins, people tend to be very close to. You grew up together, playing together, etc. And then then eventually, when you're baligh, you're non-mahram, and you have to observe hijab and those kind of things, right? But still, you contact, and that closeness remains. And the Sharia encourages that these ties are maintained, right? The Sharia encourages that these ties are maintained. This is family. And in my view, WhatsApp is a good way to maintain those ties. Now, why you might hesitate and feel hesitant towards it, or feel like somehow this is harmful, I don't believe there is a standard reason why we might be able to say, oh, in principle, don't do it because it's bad, it's wrong. There is no such thing, right? Here, it's mubah. It's permissible to do it. And I would even say that if it keeps families together, if it keeps families talking, communicating, if it keeps the relationship alive and so on. Because people nowadays, because we live such individual lives, they become distant very, very quickly, right? And that's not a good thing. And WhatsApp is a good way to do it without any of the obvious muharramat. So for you to feel that I don't want to be part of this, there has to be a reason, like, for example, the people in the group are sharing inappropriate things, or
or sharing things that I might not personally agree to these particular.
Yeah. But again, those things should be from the muharramat. They should be from the things that are haram. If people are joking and doing things that are mubah, that are permissible, do you understand? Then there's no reason to step out. And obviously, you're a cousin, you're a relation, so you can always say, guys, don't share things like that. It's haram.
That's it.
Do you understand? And that's it.
And sometimes the cousin might not necessarily be in the same country. They might be somewhere abroad.
Yeah, exactly.
And WhatsApp, perhaps, or any other social media would be the only
sometimes even immediate family, people, you might not speak to them in months, but because of these online forums, you're speaking to them on a regular basis. And it keeps the family spirit alive. So I don't think principally that's a bad thing.
Correct. And
principally, it's a good thing.
Fair enough. And what's your word of advice would be when it comes to young cousins, just to avoid any kind of issues down the line in the future if they're privately messaged and they're both young, boy or a girl? Any tips to the parents?
If it's a cousin, you're not going to be able to stop it anyway.
Correct.
If two first cousins end up moving from the appropriate to the inappropriate, whether it's a forum or whether it's not a forum, you're not going to be able to stop it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? That's going to happen anyway. There's no way that's going to be stopped. And completely sheltering them isn't going to stop it. If anything, it's going to create it's going to create tension between yourself and your children. If you're stopping them from doing things that there's no reason to stop.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So we have to have a balance.
We have to have a balance. We can't be overly restrictive with our children with regards to these things, especially in something that actually falls, as far as the Sharia is concerned, falls in a domain that is actually the domain of the encouraged. So, for example, in my family, right, now that my children and my siblings' children are growing up,
correct,
alhamdulillah, we're a practicing family and so on. What we've had to do is just teach the children the boundaries because they've grown up together, playing together, right? They love one another. They see each other as brothers and sisters, right? And the thought of inappropriate relationships has never occurred to them, at least not kind of through the ages of the early teens and so on and into their baligh years, right? So what we've had to do is teach them the boundaries.
Okay.
You understand? So the girls now, yes, you see each other as brother and sister, but now you have to observe hijab.
So in other words, rather than putting restriction, making sure they're aware of their harim and educate them.
Educate.
Thank you very much for that. Hope that answer is clear to you. And once again, thank you to our regular caller all the way from Birmingham, our sister. Next caller, let's see who's on the line. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, brother, for calling in.
Yeah, my name is Mehdi from London. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. What's your question?
Yeah, my question is, I wanted to know what is the Islamic view of the people living in countries where they don't have the right to worship God or any other religion and accept their leaders. So,
interesting question.
Of course, they don't know about Islam.
Very interesting question. It's a new type of question on Ask Eman. Thank you very much for asking that question. Let's see.
What was that last bit? Except what?
Except the leader of the country.
Okay.
Now, it's very unusual. I have not come across that you have to only worship the leader and there's no religion in the country. But if that is the case, is there any Islamic view on such a question that in the country...
It depends on whether hijrah is possible or not.
Migrate, you mean?
Yeah. So whether migrating is possible or not. If migration isn't possible, then you do your best. You have sabr and you do your best.
Okay.
And of course, the Quran acknowledges that some people are in that kind of situation. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about المستضعفين من الرجال والنساء الذين لا يستطيعون حيلة ولا يهتدون سبيلا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about people who are weak and subjugated, who men and women who find no way out. They have no strategy to get out of the situation that they're in. ولا يهتدون سبيلا. They have no way out. Right, so this is possible. If that's the case, then inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them for their patience and reward them for the suffering and so on. And they just have to do whatever is possible in their circumstance. So for example, private worship is possible for the most part and so on. However, if hijrah is possible, then hijrah is what is mandated.
Okay.
If migrating out of that situation is possible, then that is what is required.
Thank you very much. I think we've understood the question and I understood the background or the nature of your question. But thank you very much once again for being very diplomatic in your approach. Moving on swiftly to our next question. Assalamu alaikum. Or next caller, rather. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes, what's your question?
I want to insurance, house insurance is halal.
House insurance is haram. Okay, is it haram? Okay, we've discussed that in the beginning of the... How halal. Okay, fine. We've discussed that in the beginning of the program. I believe you may have missed it. I'll get Shaykh to quickly summarize it. Shaykh, house insurance.
Yes, it's haram.
Okay, fine. That's
It's
the
haram. It's not permissible.
Okay,
because of the way it operates, as we discussed earlier.
Okay, we've discussed this question earlier. Purely on the basis of time, we won't be able to get into this more in detail. But inshallah, if I get Shaykh back again, perhaps next month or a couple of weeks later, then perhaps we might also look into it in very detail. But also be mindful again, once again, if you're a property owner and you're on mortgage, and it's mandatory by your financial institution to have at least property insurance or physical insurance.
So
Shaykh, I'll come back to you.
To clear it up for the sister, it's only permissible if it is required by law.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much for that. So I don't have to repeat myself. Shaykh has clarified it. But if you still have any question in detail, then it's best to have a one-to-one conversation. TV stations are not the appropriate place to give a specific answer to your specific question. But thank you once again for asking such an important question. Shaykh, we have literally less than 5 minutes. Let's see how swift we can be. Is it permissible to read some Quran or do some dhikr during the Jum'ah khutbah?
The Hanafis take a really strong stance in this. They say you have to listen and you have to be silent.
Okay.
Right. So you have to listen and you have to be silent. And on that basis, basically, no, you can't speak and you can't do anything else.
Okay.
Right. Other fuqaha permit salah, and so on. I would say that dhikr that is required by the khutbah, like the Imam is saying Ameen, if the Imam is saying a dua, one can say Ameen. Right?
In the khutbah, if he says dua.
Yeah, he says dua in the khutbah. You're responding to the khutbah. You'll say Ameen. Naturally, that you should do. Also, obviously, a khutbah is happening. You should be paying attention to that.
Okay. Now the question comes in: if I don't understand the khutbah, if it's in Arabic,
then again to stay true to the rulings. In the Hanafi madhab, one if they're completely oblivious to what's going on in the khutbah, as is often the case. Then one may engage in dhikr like silently, like in their mind and so on. That's fine.
And sometimes people, they have a short nap. I sometimes even have question whether the wudu is still there or not. What advice do you have?
As long as you're seated firmly on the ground, your wudu is fine.
Okay.
Try your best to stay awake. You're in an act of worship. The khutbah is an act of worship. Some ulama say that it's like part of salah. So the way you wouldn't fall asleep and drop off in salah, even though sometimes you can't even hear what the imam is doing in salah, right? But you stay awake. So similarly, treat it as an act of worship and remain in a state of alertness. And remember, just like in salah, even if you don't hear anything, don't understand anything, you're standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think of it in that way.
Thank you very much. And again, short question. Obviously, this is intended once we go to normal situation. Of course, we understand it's lockdowns and masajid generally are not open for congregational prayer. Now, someone has the habit of always coming late to the khutbah. We see that in masajid. I'm sure you also see that. There are particular individual or some individual, or not occasional, but on a continuous basis. What advice do you have? 20 seconds.
Well, according to most of the fuqaha, it is sunnah. So inshallah, it is not sinful unless done out of neglect. But in the Hanafi madhab, it's wajib.
Okay.
The khutbah is wajib, and it's wajib to attend it and listen to it.
If you translate the word wajib?
Obligatory.
Okay.
Obligatory, and therefore there is sin in missing part or all of the khutbah, particularly if it's done without an excuse and done habitually. So one should be mindful. And, please not only attend the khutbah, but attend the talks as well. Because at the end of the day, we need to benefit and we need to be reminded. When we're reminded of matters of deen, it's something that we need. It isn't something that we should treat as some kind of burden. It's something that we need. When you hear the reminders, that's when you will be spiritually uplifted and it will give you that boost to continue.
Thank you.
So it's important.
Thank you very much. And some of you are asking me the contact details of the Shaykh. Do contact the control room. They will be in a best position to give you any details if they can. Next question. How do I stop thinking about things in Salah even though I try to concentrate my best to offer Salah? Now, we have very little time in 30 seconds.
Look, don't seek the impossible. Everybody struggles. Everybody struggles, right? Think of yourself as in a constant battle. Think of yourself as in a constant battle, right? Where you have moments of concentration and the shaitan steals moments away from you. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ uses this reference of shaitan stealing moments away from you, right? But you've got to grab it back. Do you understand? And think of yourself as in this kind of up and down battle. And I would say that inshallah, as long as you remain in that battle and you don't end up with long spans of time when you have no concentration, then inshallah you will get your full reward.
Thank you.
Right? So think of yourself Don't, push for some kind of idea. You may eventually get there, but the way to get there is to remain in the fight and keep trying to maintain concentration for as much as you can.
Thank you very much for that. Now, next question: do I need to make wudu to read Quran as I normally do, but lately I keep on releasing?
You don't need to make wudu to recite Quran. In the Hanafi madhab, you need wudu to touch the Quran, but not to recite. And the same is with the other fuqaha. There's no need for wudu to recite the Quran, although some of the other fuqaha allow touching without wudu as well.
What about reading from memory?
I won't go into... Oh, no, absolutely. If you recite from memory, or even if you turn the page over with a pen or with a handkerchief or something, it's permissible to do.
Thank you very much for that. We have got literally less than 1 minute. Can you please tell us some knowledgeable people undermine certain Hanafi practices such as method of witr salah and timing of asr salah in 30 seconds?
Well, they shouldn't.
Okay.
It's against the principle of ikhtilaf. We don't undermine opinions, we respect difference of opinion. They shouldn't do that. It's as simple as that.
Okay, thank you ever so much. There have been some dedicated viewers of Shaykh Ad-Duha asking some specific question to him. I can see that from the nature of your question. Inshallah, Shaykh will be again sometime perhaps later this month or maybe next month, but we'd inshallah encourage Shaykh to give us as much time as possible. Inshallah. Thank you very much, Shaykh, for your valuable time. My dear viewers, this is where we come to the end of our tonight's program. But if you have got any question, then please feel free to note down the contact details. Inshallah, in our next episode, I believe I'll be live on Friday back here on Eman Channel. But if you're watching tomorrow, it's Ask Eman Urdu. So if you've got any question that you would like to get answered in Urdu language, then the show is tomorrow. So please make sure like, share and comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, Instagram and Twitter handle. That's all from us for tonight. Until next time, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.